What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Create. And today, guys, we are finally going to be setting up some automated mining, and we're going to be doing it using the cart assembler. Now, there's a lot of different ways to set up automated mining in Create, and they are all very cool. Believe me, today is no exception, but they do all come with varying complexities, and today's is going to be what I would consider to be one of the simpler setups to do, which is great because some of the higher tier ones tend to be very complicated and require a lot of resources, so it's kind of good to dip your toes in using a setup like this. And then on top of that, we get to learn about the cart assembler, which I think is a very cool block on its own. So we really don't need to craft much for today's episode, or at least nothing new, since really the only new thing that we're going to be using is the cart assembler, and it's really not that expensive. It's going to be 2 andesite alloy, a rail, a piece of redstone dust, and 3 types of logs of, your choosing. So we'll grab that out, and then we will do our crafting for that. It's a pretty simple block. Doesn't look crazy fancy either. But then on top of that, we need a bunch of stuff that's going to vary depending on your setup. Now, I will say that there are some things that are standard across this setup to make it function, but when you're setting it up, you will notice that you can vary some of the things depending on the area you want to mine, how you want it to function. And so the things that can change will be the number of linear chassis you need, the number of mechanical drills you need, the number of chests you need, and all these will kind of correspond. The more mechanical drills you want to clear a bigger area, the more chassis you'll need because you'll need to be able to attach the drills to something, and then the more chests you might need because the more you're mining, the more you're going to have to store, and so you're going to need to put that somewhere, and obviously the chest or adjustable crate, if you choose to use that, will need to go on the system somewhere for all the items to go in. Now, on top of that, you're also going to need a couple different miscellaneous things that are not necessarily going to be built onto the setup, but are going to be needed for it to function. And that's going to be, of course, the slime ball so that we can make the linear chassis sticky. Then we're going to have a varying number of rails. Depending on how far you want this setup to go, you can include as many or as few rails as you want. You're going to need a minecart, but you can also bring a minecart with a furnace. Please keep in mind you need a regular minecart. So the minecart with a furnace does not replace the regular minecart in this setup. I believe in one of the earlier updates, it used to be able to work with just the minecart with a furnace, but that is not the case anymore. I don't know if that's intended or not, but I tested it and it does not work anymore. So you're going to need both if you choose to bring the minecart with a furnace too. Then if you do, you're going to need some coal or charcoal to go along with that. So without further ado, let's grab all this stuff out and head down into the mine to start setting this up, because I am pretty excited to finally be able to do some automated mining. I'm not going to lie, guys, I'm getting a little bit tired of doing regular mining, so we'll head down now. I did increase the speed of this elevator. It's not crazy fast still. I'd still say this is pretty slow, but I did increase it from last episode because it took way too long to get down there. So hopefully it will be a little bit less arduous of a trip with us having to talk through it. But a couple things that I do want to point out for this setup are that, like I said, depending on how you want to set it up, it's going to, vary in the blocks that you're going to require. But there are, of course, some of the standardized ones that we went over. Along with that, there are some pitfalls that come along with this setup that you need to be aware of. And that comes along with the deeper down you're mining, things like running into lava and water are going to cause problems for this setup. So you just need to keep that in mind. Depending on where you are going to be setting this up, I'm doing it all the way down at Y level 11, where I typically mine. You can do it really anywhere, but just to keep in mind that water and lava will in fact mess this setup up. So there are a couple conditions you need to be aware of before you actually put this into place. Now, right in front of me, we have a tunnel. And typically I would light this up when I go mining. All I do is strip mining. I'll just mine down and then, next side and then go over a couple, mine down that. And that's how I do it. And then when you find a pocket of ore, you mine that. Well, right now what I did is I simulated, because this is a new mine, so I didn't actually use it yet, but I simulated if I had mined down just one tunnel and I didn't gather any of the ore from any of the sides. But what we have here is a 2 high tunnel that is 1 wide, and the entire ground has no torches on it, but there's no dips in the ground here. There's no lava. There's no water. It's as if you made it all the way to the end, decided you wanted to come back, and just didn't have any torches on the ground, which of course you would have some torches, but you could break those if you wanted. What we're going to do with this is use the machine to gather a ton of the area around it. So we'll get anything that is in the surrounding area. And of course, the size of the area you're going to get is based off of the setup. So without further ado, we'll put down the cart assembler. And this is where the entire thing is going to start. So I'm going to put it down, let's say right here. And this is where everything is going to start, because the cart assembler is going to be the middleman that is going to attach the setup around it with all the chassis and blocks on it to the cart that passes through it. Now, if it has a redstone signal, it's going to remove the parts attached to the cart and hold them on the outside. So it's basically going to do the reverse of what it's going to do with no power, which is attach what's around it. If it's got power, it's going to take off what's around the cart. So just something to keep in mind, in this setup, we are never going to really use the removal function of it. We're just going to use it to attach, but that is an option you have with the cart assembler if it does have a redstone signal. But pretty much for our purpose, like I said, this is going to be the part that attaches all the components to the cart that passes through it. So we can take and throw down one rail right behind here just so that we can place down the cart, and we can throw down one rail in front of here for the setup to start. But now we actually go into attaching the chassis and all that good stuff. So we can put down linear chassis all the way around this, just like this. And this is going to be the base setup if you want to do a little bit of mining. Now, I say this because this will have mechanical drills on it, and technically you don't need those. You could do this without any mechanical drills. There would just be no purpose. But the next part is extremely critical. So we're going to come in the front here, and I may need to clear out a little bit more area on one of these sides just so that we can work a little bit to get this actually set up. But we're going to grab out our slime ball, and we're going to make these all sticky because we're eventually going to be putting stuff on them. But then we're going to put down another linear chassis, and we're going to keep coming out another linear chassis, and I believe we want to have it 1, 2, 3, 4. We need to have it one more, and then here. So then we are going to bring it down like so, and we're going to make this sticky. Now, it's very important you remember to make these sticky, especially this one right here. Don't forget this. And we are going to put down the deployer. Now, the reason that this is so important is because this is what's going to allow the system to function. And I say that because we are not going to be putting down rails ourselves. That would be a huge pain in the butt. So, especially if you're going to make this go really far. So what we're going to do is put a bunch of rails in a chest on the back where some of the items are going to be stored. We're going to pre-fill it with rails, and we are going to have this deployer place the rails in front of the setup as it goes. So it's going to sort of be a self-rail building setup. And so what we can do is take out some of the rails, and we are going to put those on there, and you can click, them in if you want. But we are going to make sure that it's put as the filter for that. And then we are going to come back here, and we can put down, I hear a guy somewhere. I'm going to make sure he's not going to kill me. But we can put down the chests on the back. So in here, we can drop the rest of these rails. And so this setup should be able to pull those rails from those attached chests and place them down for us, which is awesome because it's going to allow this setup to go, I believe it would be technically 128 blocks in this direction. We only have a stack in there and then a stack -1 in here because we did place one down, or I guess -2 in there because we placed 2 down, but you get the idea. It's going to go almost 128 blocks in that direction, assuming it does not hit any of those sort of adverse events that I mentioned. Obviously, the ground is flat. We don't need to worry about that because we mined the tunnel ourselves, but things like water and lava, depending on how far out the mechanical drills go, might pop up, and then we might need to deal with those manually, which I would probably just move the setup after that. But now we come to the part of setting down the remaining linear chassis on the side, and this is where you pretty much get to pick how big you want it to be. So we can put down these and slap down the mechanical drills, and then we can come around and we can do the same over here. Just mine our way over. I know it's really dark. It may be difficult to see. The main idea is I don't want any torches there. Now, of course, when you're setting this up, you will have to potentially reset it up, or not potentially, but you will have to reset it up when you eventually move the setup. So I think that you probably want it to travel a decent distance to get the most bang for your buck in terms of time invested with actually setting this up. And also with expanding it. So I wouldn't really do one mechanical drill on the side. I would maybe do, 2, maybe even 3. I have stuff here to do 3 on each side, but I think we're going to stick with, well, technically it's 4 on each side, but coming out 2. But I think that should be good then. Everything has been stickied, which is the most important part. When people are setting up linear chassis and things like this and attaching them, the one thing that they always forget is to sticky them. And then when you make the setup go, the blocks, when they attach to the minecart, just like we've dealt with a lot of the other setups using radial and linear chassis, they are not treated as actual blocks. They become visually there, but they are basically you can pass right through them. I don't know what you'd call that. You can pass right through them though. So what's going to happen is any blocks that aren't sticky are just going to be left behind. They're not going to be attached using the cart assembler, and your cart is going to go off with half the blocks it needs and won't function. And then you have to break everything and start over again. And we're really praying that that doesn't happen to us today. But everything should be good to go now. I believe we've got our drills here, and you actually don't need to worry about rotational power for these drills. What's going to happen is when this moves forward, they're going to start mining these blocks, and it's going to be relatively slow. It's not going to be super quick, but the deployer will place down the rail, and these will mine the blocks in front of it without any rotational power, just the cart moving. Now we have 2 options here, and I'm going to show you both of them so that we can see, but we're going to start out with the minecart, and you can push it, and the minecart will go, and it will go for a decent distance, actually, longer than you probably expect with how it's going. It looks very odd because it's starting and stopping, so the speed seems a little bit off, but it'll go a decent distance. But if you want it to go really far, you're going to need to either use things like powered rails, which in this case is not viable without a really complicated setup to constantly place down powered rails at certain intervals and redstone, or you could use the minecart with a furnace. So I know one thing I did mention earlier, in an earlier update, I believe from what I've seen, minecart with a furnace could be the cart that this attached onto. I tested it numerous times. I promise you guys, it does not work. We can even try it right now if we wanted to, but I believe we need to use it as the pushing cart. So it should work fine if you use it as the pushing cart. I tested it, but unless things recently changed in an update I have not installed yet, in the version I'm currently using, that is not a thing. It might be a bug. It might be intended because it was overpowered. I'm not sure, but I'm just letting you guys know that if you're having issues with that not working, that's why. So let's grab out the regular minecart. We already got it ready to go. And moment of truth, we're going to put this down and we're just going to push. And honestly, I'm kind of nervous because if I messed up anything in this setup, it's not going to work, but we'll see. So there we go. So it attaches and you can see that it is stopping and it's breaking those blocks. You can see that the rails are getting placed down. Now you could do a lot of cool things. You could make it put down torches. You could have a stickied deployer in the back here that puts down torches here. But you can see that it's now mining, and pretty much my strategy with this would be you clear out an area like this, and then I will run down and you can see we got some iron right here. Then I'll manually mine that, and we'll place down torches manually too. So we can just put them down like this. But you can see it definitely slows down as it's mining. But it's working, and the items will be stored in these chests. There's a very real possibility that these chests will be full, and I didn't put enough in there. You can also see we can run into some problems here with things like gravel, where it will eventually fall. That's fine. We can deal with that and just manually clear it, especially if you're using this to actually clear out a tunnel for use purposes. If you're trying to clear out a big tunnel, this can be a very easy way to do it. If you're just using it for that purpose of just obviously clearing stuff out, not actually mining, and you want to make it really huge. But you can see we can keep following this as it goes, and it actually goes, like I said, a surprising distance when you just push it. Okay, so here we go. So we ran into the first problem, and you can see it gets very weird. The minecart starts getting turned, and because the rails broke, it has stopped functioning. So unfortunately, this is where this one's journey comes to an end. It did not get nearly as far as I had hoped, but we did get to show you guys how it works. And the way that you stop it is you break the minecart, and immediately every block becomes real again, as how I will phrase it. Now, obviously, you are not always going to run into this. This is a special circumstance because, as we can see right here, of course, we pass through a ravine which has plenty of water and plenty of lava to go around. You're not always going to run into issues like this, I promise you, but it is one of the pitfalls of this setup. Now what we can do is open up these chests in the back if we just mine the blocks above them, and we can see we got a bunch of cobblestone, some lapis. We still have the rails in here. We didn't use all of these. Oh wow, and there's more water up here. So it didn't even dip into this chest yet, but we got all the stuff in this chest over here. Now, I know that this is obviously, pretty rough trial run, but then I would just come through and clear out all the stuff in here that it shows you, almost like you're cave mining. So it opens up a huge area and you can see a bunch of things that it might otherwise would not have mined, but you're able to grab them like this. Now, there are a couple cool ideas that people have with setups like this that I've seen, where you can have a mechanical drill extended out in the back and it will break the rails that have been placed behind the machine and almost indefinitely run. I don't see a huge point behind that. It's really cool, but just because of what happened here, where you're bound to eventually hit something that's going to cause this to stop. Whether or not that's going to be very early or very late, that is, up to the world and RNG and, if you are lucky that day. But you're not going to let it run indefinitely. So, yeah, I don't see a huge point behind that. I think if you have 2 stacks, that's more than enough. But I'm just going to go through and break all this so we can get the stuff back. And of course, all you would do is just break it and set it up again. So you would take this and go over to the next area you want and set it up again. Or if you wanted to continue this tunnel, you could just easily set it up again by getting rid of the water, dealing with whatever caused the issue in the first place, and then starting it up a second time. So I think that's probably going to be it for today, guys. I had really hoped we'd be able to get this to go further, but it's actually good to show you guys one of the pitfalls of the simpler setup to do. Obviously, that was very quick to set up, at least compared to some of the other ones that you will see. But of course, it does come with the downsides I mentioned. So we made it a decent distance, but unfortunately not as far as I would have liked. So we'll just pick up all these rails and head back. And now we have an enormous tunnel. And we can grab, some of the iron here, like I had said. And it does save you time. It is very cool. I think the cart assembler itself is awesome. It has a lot of applications, but that is one of the first ways to do automated mining in a world that is the simplest way to set it up compared to some of the other ones that I think are admittedly even cooler than this. I think this one is very cool. You're basically building your own little robot that's going to work for you. But some of the later ones are even cooler. So hopefully you guys found that informative and entertaining. I apologize that it did not make it further. We were cursed by RNG today and, the gods of Minecraft, water and lava. But hopefully you guys will have better luck in your world if you try it out. Let me know if you try it out and how it works, or if you make any cool upgrades to it that allow it to be even more efficient, since there are a lot of ones that you can do. But that's going to be for today, guys, and I will talk to you later.
Upside down, faces swirling past me, all my memories rolling vastly.